going on? Welcome back to another episode of Demand the Truth. I have Daniel Lacalle. He is a PhD economist, author of Escape to the Central Bank, Life in Financial Markets, The Energy World is Flat. You've seen him on Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, Bloomberg, CNBC, Forbes, but most importantly, and probably reaching the most people here on Demand the Truth, first time we're having audio. It looks really good, so I'm glad you can join me. Welcome back to the show, Daniel. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Great. So I wanted to cover some of the recent articles that you've went over, a few things that you've talked about. But right before the show, I was having a philosophical debate with my friend Naz, my friend Josh, and my brother Matthew. And I would assume that we both believe in free markets here. And we do have this terrible gap between the wealthiest people and the smallest amount of people. I mean, it's the largest gap between the poor and the rich, arguably, historically, maybe even of all time. And we want to get to the place where we have these free markets, and I'm not a socialist or a liberalist, and I want to get into that, but what, if anything, could we do legally and lawfully to help maybe rectify this gap, kind of even the playing field a lot for the ordinary person against maybe these megalithic central bankers and people? What would you say to that?
Well, on one side, it is true that there is a wealth gap. Absolutely, there is. I think that unfortunately, what is happening is that none of us, you or I, are against the wealth gap when it is generated by meritocracy. Nobody. If you have a tremendous business and it goes phenomenally well, you more than deserve to be extremely wealthy, and actually that generates what is called positive inequality, which means that you become a role model that people aspire to. So that is a bad thing in itself.
You also probably will
What is a
employ people too.
Absolutely, absolutely, and inequality in itself is what has helped countries like the United States be more prosperous, because the very concept of what we call the American dream is a concept of inequality, is a concept of inequality via meritocracy, not from a negative perspective. Now, why do we have a perception that inequality right now is not acceptable? The main reason behind it is because what the average citizen does see is that there is a big disparity between the people that are able to get wealthier because of monetary policy and because of government intervention, relative to the people that do it through hard work or because of their success or innovation or ability to become richer, which is also an ability in itself. So what can we do? The first thing that we need to do is, people like yourself, like us, we need to constantly remind people that this monetary policy and these interventionist policies that are being presented to us as a way to act against inequality are actually the opposite, are actually creating that discontent that is generating so much, such a tremendous level of anger in so many countries. When you see that central banks are telling the average citizen that there is absolutely no inflation, yet the average citizen sees that the cost of living is rising, that it's harder to get to the end of the month, etc., then people get angry, and they get angry for a reason. So one of the main things that we need to do is to constantly remind people that these demand side policies, printing money, aggressively lowering rates, disproportionately benefit the already indebted, the already wealthy, and the already those that already have access to capital, against the savers and the salaries.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on that. I think our current crony capitalism situation basically expedites and makes it exponential, the fact that it's growing this gap. When the government picks winners and losers with healthcare, working with Jeff Bezos, or picking contracts, at least here in the United States, and then just the fact that they can shut people down. And as you talked about inflation, the entire reason the United States was given given the Federal Reserve was because it was supposed to keep a tab on inflation, and we've seen it inflate the currency far worse than anything we had before that, just normally or in the first or second iterations of the central banks that we had here. But now we're coming into the 21st century. I know you spoke about this a little before, but I've had you on the show to talk about this years ago, and now we're getting to the place where you go out to a restaurant, you might not even see a server, it just might be a tablet. You got the self-checkouts everywhere, the self-driving trucks and cars are coming. There's people on different sides of the fence here, people that say, this is a cataclysm. We've never seen anything like this before. And then there's other people that say, human beings are very innovative and adapt. And there's always, just when the Industrial Revolution came on, there was something, and there's always something else. What's your take on the future of our economy now that automation is right on its way on?
Yeah. One thing that we need to understand is that technology does not destroy jobs. It destroys acts. It destroys very specific labor and skills. No. And what that means basically, sorry, what that means basically is that your job, my job, is not destroyed by technology. For example, I always tell to my students that my first job was destroyed 5 or 6 times by technology, because my first job was to actually follow one piece of data on a screen in a bank. No, so that now you get on a phone. That doesn't mean that my activity and my skill sets have been destroyed by technology. It means that something that anybody can understand was ludicrous, that my first job was something that was easily replaceable by a machine, has allowed me to adapt to something that within the same skill set is a much better job. So what ends up happening is that technology, what it does is to reduce the utilization of human labor in those areas that human labor itself does not want to be involved. And usually what you hear is that lower skilled jobs are going to be replaced by machines, and therefore those people will be out of a job. If you look at the economies in which there is a higher level of digitalization and a higher level of robots, it is actually untrue that those are societies in which there is not only a much lower level of unemployment, but it is also a much higher level of employment in low-skilled jobs. Just different low-skilled jobs. Maybe instead of being in a machine, in a plant, putting together pieces of a car, you're going to be maybe in another different type of activity, more oriented towards services, still maybe with low skills. Now, what we need to do is to allow people to not just adapt, but also be more aware of what are all of the skills that they have. Many times, because we do one job, we tend to believe that that job is our skill set, and we tend to be very, very wrong. And the reason why we're wrong is because we forget that there are numerous things about the things that we do every day that have a very high level of added value, and sometimes because we equate the salary or the payroll that we get from the job that we do, we think that that is all that we know how to do. We need to help people to transform, adapt themselves, and be more aware of the skill sets and the high added value that they can provide, because you will see that I'm very sure that we will have this conversation in 5 or 6 years' time. You will see that there will be lower unemployment, higher level of robotization, and what we need to do is to help the people that might have some challenges in the process to not just adapt themselves, but also to learn of their already existing skills that they're not aware of.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add, I think what you said was very on point and eloquent. You know, when we have more time due to technology, we don't just have to sit there and be cogs in the wheel. We can do what we are doing as humans, or what we're meant to do as humans, which is be creative and be innovators, and gives us time. And hey, we don't have to dig this ditch anymore. Spend my time being creative, which is how I think humans are supposed to be. So you wrote an article a little while back about China and the crypto one. I was wondering what you thought. A lot of people say, you know, China is here, they come and they got all this stuff. But then I see people saying too, hey, China's got entire cities that people aren't living in. This whole thing that China is going through is a huge bubble. What's your estimation on what's going on in China? Are they something to fear economically?
China has some great things, of course. It's a great nation, and it has a very strong high productivity sector that is rising rapidly. However, China as an overall economy is suffering from being a directed economy, and is suffering from being a directed economy in which the government dictates what should be done, and when that leads to excess capacity, that excess capacity is left behind, and we see all of that not just in the phantom cities that you were mentioning before, which are very abundant all over China, but also in the panels, in the layers and layers of miles of panels, of solar panels that are not connected to the grid, in the numerous white elephants all over the country. So I think that the Chinese economy is actually worsening because of the government's lack of decision in being more prudent about sustaining GDP at all costs via excessive spending and massive debt. So its big Achilles heel is actually the massive shortage of dollars that it has, added to a government that is maybe unwillingly, or maybe is sort of looking at it as a collateral damage, but is leaving too much overcapacity in the system and making the economy much less dynamic and much less robust. If you look at China's strength of a few years ago, what were they? Mainly that it was a very strong saving country and that it had very solid demographics. Those two factors are also worsening. So is it a threat? I don't think it is a threat. I think that unfortunately for the Chinese citizens, the government abandoned its reform program of reducing overcapacity, reducing debt, and strengthening the economy, and has decided to go exactly back to the white elephant and excess debt policies of the past.
Now, as far as other markets, do you see any ones that are sneaking up on us, any other burgeoning markets, whether they be just within the economy or nation states themselves? And what do you think is going on as far as the crypto world and the future of crypto and blockchain technology, if you could speak to both of those?
Yeah, I think that the future of cryptocurrencies and blockchain is obviously very strong. And it's obviously very strong because what we're living right now in this absolute crazy monetary policies that we see all over the world is that once the excess in monetary policy that we have seen in the past years starts to fade away, the decision of central banks all over the world is not to reduce the imbalances but to accelerate them, and to get even further into excuse me, because I have a big cold.
I'm sorry.
And no problem. So the problem that is that instead of normalizing monetary policy, what central banks are doing is actually accelerating and getting even further into negative rate territory, etc. Therefore, the problem is that for for any average citizen, unless you live in a country that still has a currency that is a world currency reserve, a world reserve of value currency, what you're going to find yourself is without many options to keep your savings, to keep your savings your real savings in value maintained. So what many of the people in countries like, for example, Argentina, etc., have to do is look for opportunities either in cryptocurrencies, in gold, blockchain, you name it. So that is happening in Zimbabwe, it's happening in Nigeria, it's happening in China, it's happening in Iran. No? So I think that because the further central banks go into this crazy downward spiral of monetary policy, the stronger the cryptocurrencies will get.
Yeah,
Just
and
let me
actually,
get a glass of water for a second. Just let me get a glass of
yeah,
water.
yeah, take your time. Take your time. I can cut this out. No rush.
I'm back. Sorry.
All right, good.
Sorry
So
about that.
that ties into my next question too, because with the rise of crypto, my next question was, what is the future of central banks? Because I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to start ranting. Tell me, what do you think is the future of central banks? Because I mean, what I tell my friends a lot that really don't know, I mean, I don't really know much about the economy in the first place. That's why I study people like yourself and others. But when I try to describe the Federal Reserve fiat system to people, I say, look, we printing money out of thin air. We can never mathematically pay this back. This is not my opinion. So we're printing so much money out of thin air. It's a basketball game. We're down 100 points, but it's like maybe 7 seconds left and keep calling timeouts, right? That's kind of my analogy. So what is the future of central banks? How long can they exist doing what they do? And especially after what you just said.
They can last a very, very long time. They can. Let's start from that premise. Why do they last a very long time? Because because in essence, what they're actually doing is creating credit more than printing money in a sort of Venezuelan, Iranian, Argentinian way. So by creating credit, what they're actually doing is making the economy more dependent on the perpetuation of debt. No? Can that last for a very long time? Yes, and as long as there is a quid pro quo between growth and the destruction of the purchasing power of the currency. So citizens, to a certain extent, accept this process of inflation and this process of reduction of purchasing power of the currency in exchange for the perception that there will be a slightly better growth or a slightly better level of returns down the line. So when that thin line of confidence breaks, then all hell breaks loose. I don't know when it can happen. You look at Japan, has 250% of debt to GDP, and the government has been doing, and the central bank of Japan has been doing this for 3 decades, and it seems like nothing is happening. You do see things, though. You do see things that are starting to crack. No, what are the first things? Is that citizens don't respond to financial repression, to the reduction of rates and the increase of liquidity in the same way. The central banks expect that by lowering rates and increasing liquidity, people will spend more, get more in debt, and get the economy rolling, and that will pay back all of that money that is being created. No, what ends up happening as the reality of the economy comes to the fore is that citizens actually become more prudent. And when interest rates are so low, they don't take more credit, they take less. Companies don't invest more, they invest less. And we're seeing it, for example, in the United States. You see massively low rates, yet companies are not investing more. Not because they're stupid, not because they don't have access to credit. It's simply because they don't find real alternatives for investment. So the fact that citizens and economic agents are becoming more prudent is in itself proof that the trick is not working anymore. That people are starting to see that there's a trick hidden behind the rabbit in the hat.
Absolutely. And I do think that there are certain factors going on, even not economically, that people are starting to kind of see beyond the veil. And when the media has lied for so long and then it's come out, and then, I mean, even just as a side note, with this Jeffrey Epstein thing, people will not let that go. And to me, that's a sign. That's like one of the watershed moments, like JFK, where, hey, you know, we're not just buying this. So I think across the board, people are starting to become more skeptical. I think it's a good thing. And I know you're under the weather and a busy man, so I wanted to ask you two more questions. And I appreciate you coming on under your conditions right now. But you wrote an article a little while ago. I thought it was really, really good. I think everyone should go and check it out. And I believe the title was "Socialism is a Huge Threat to the Environment." I'll put it up in the link under this box here. Would you talk a little bit about that? Not too much. I want people to go and read it. And I'll put it in the link here. But talk to me a little bit about how socialism, because everybody that's liberal and socialist, they think the environment's the best thing, and that's what they're there for. So how is socialism a threat to the environment?
Socialism is a threat to the environment because socialism goes against meritocracy and competition. Those are two things that socialism is always against. And those two things, competition and meritocracy, are the only things that make innovation thrive and that make the advantages and the improvements help the improvements in to the environment. You're not going to achieve improvements in the environmental conditions and improvements to in the green economy without competition and without innovation. And none of those factors can happen by committee decision, which is how socialism works. So if you look, for example, the history tells you, look at the countries that have been more damaging to the environment. What can I tell you? And people, I'm sure that many of the people that are watching us right now have seen the Chernobyl movie series in HBO or whatever. Look at what the Soviet Union did to the environment. Look what the Soviet Union did to the clean air, to the health of the population. Look at what most of the OPEC countries are socialist way. Most of them are state-owned enterprises with governments that are either directly socialist or have very interventionist policies. The reality is that what has made the green revolution that we are seeing right now has actually the reason why in the United States, for example, you have been able to reduce emissions, plus at the same time reduce electricity and gas bills for consumers, is because of competition between natural gas and renewables that would have never happened in an intervened socialist society. In an intervened socialist society, like for example we have seen in the European Union, you end up with much higher gas and electricity bills, yet more dependent on, for example, Russian gas, like Germany.
Absolutely. Last question. What do you think, if anything, does the future holds, and what's kind of been on your radar lately?
Well, I think that what we're seeing right now is a late cycle, very clear late cycle part of the economy. So a significant slowdown, but stubbornly far away from a recession. And the reason why it's stubbornly far away from a recession is precisely because of the things that we have been talking about a few minutes ago. Very low rates, massive liquidity, perpetuate overcapacity that keeps the economy stagnant but not led into a crisis. What I think that is a pity is that by having this obsession with adjusting the cycle constantly, we are also avoiding the positives of change. Huh? And I would be extremely excited about the improvements in technology and the improvements in disruptive technologies and in, for example, green energy that we were mentioning before, if at the same time we were not trying so aggressively to keep everything unchanged forever. In a way, what is happening globally right now is that by trying to avoid a 2008 style recession, that would not happen anyway, because the 2008 recession had very clear aspects to it. By trying to avoid that, we're also avoiding the next leg of productivity, jobs, and growth.
Okay, well, Daniel, thank you very much for coming on the show. Is it D Lacalle that's still the best website for you? It's DLACALLE.com. Is that still the best website for people to check out? Okay, so guys,
that is my website.
Yeah, go there to check him out, and also purchase his books. He's got for pre-order right now, Freedom or Equality, The Key to Prosperity Through Social Capitalism. My favorite, Escape from the Central Bank Trap. That's available everywhere. The Energy World is Flat, Life in the Financial Markets. And I believe you may even have some more books as well, but go check out his books. You can check out his website. It's dlacalle.com, DLACALLE.com. All of his information is there. Go give him a follow on all his social media. He's on Twitter. He's got the blue check, so that's why I'm even surprised he's talking to me. He's a very important person, and he makes time in his life to spread his knowledge with others. His books are very interesting, and he's even talking to me. He's like Jordan right now with the flu talking to me, only he's not playing dribbling a basketball. He's telling us real things that we need to learn in life. So it's more than entertainment. This is information, and knowledge is power. So Daniel, thank you very much again. Please go to DLACALLE.com and check him out. Daniel, you have a great night. Thank you very much. I hope you feel better soon.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.